Perek Chavches. So we're up to the seventh test of Avraham Avinu, and the seventh test of Avraham Avinu is going to be that when he had the vision of the Bris Bein HaBesarim, the covenant between the pieces, so Hashem informed him that the Jews, his descendants, are going to be not enslaved, but they're going to be subjugated by different nations in the future. And the test obviously is going to be like, how's Avraham Avinu going to react to such news? So last week we had a guest speaker from Rabbi Rabber who spoke a little bit about this. He said some interesting things, and we'll probably won't touch on exactly the same ideas that he spoke about, but we'll go through the parak in a different way. Nisayan Hashvi'i, the seventh test is that after the story of Avraham Avinu's victory in the war between the 4 kings and the 5 kings in the previous parak, so Avraham Avinu sort of doubted, what's going to be with my descendants, and how do I know what's going to be my continuation? So Hashem came to him in a vision and told him what's going to happen. It says in the pasuk, after these things, after the story of the 4 kings and the 5 kings, the word of Hashem came to Abraham in a vision, saying to him, Al tira Avram, don't worry, don't be scared, Avram, etc. We're going to see exactly what Hashem said to him. But before we get to what Hashem said to him, the Medrash makes an interesting point. It says, L'chol hanavim hoyanira b'chazoin halayla. To all the prophets, Hashem appeared to them in a vision at night. U'Avram b'chazoin uvamareh. But to Avraham Avinu, Hashem appeared or gave him prophecy in a vision, a chazoin, and a mareh, and a sight. So these are 2 levels of prophecy. A chazoin is the way I understood it was like a chazoin is a vision where you just see like the words of the prophecy, and a mareh is where you see some sort of representation of Hashem or a vision of what you think is like Hashem that's sort of telling you the prophecy. And that's how I basically understood it.
It's not telling us about some picture of what's going on. Maybe some historical.
But they're both the word chazayin and the word mareh, they both mean a sight or a vision. Sight and vision really mean more or less the same thing.
I mean, you said something about, you said the vision, the mareh was Hashem. Maybe the mareh of the thing happening.
It could be, but we'll see the psukim talk about. We'll see the psukim that the Medrash is going to bring. It brings the lashon. It sounds like it's talking about a seeing of Hashem. We'll get back to that point in a few moments. Okay, so there's this level of nevuah that Avraham Avinu has called a chazoin, and a higher level called a mareh. Bechazoin minayin, how do we know? Where do we see that Hashem comes to Avraham Avinu in a chazoin, in this vision? Shenamar, it says in the pasuk, this pasuk that we just brought, b'machazeh leimar, that Hashem came to him in a vision, saying. So machazeh is that type of prophecy. Now at this point, the Medrash is going to go through what Hashem said to him, the beginning of that vision, and then we'll show you where we see the mareh, and then we'll continue on with what the vision was. Al tira Avram anoichi mogen loch. Don't be scared, Avram. I'm going to protect you. Ba'olam hazeh. Okay, so Avraham Avinu, after the war of the 4 kings and the 5 kings, was apparently scared that he had lost all of his reward. He thought that he used up his reward. The way some Mepharshim say it is that he thought he used up all his reward in this world, that Hashem gave him a special protection during the war, and that when he goes to the next world, he won't have anything left. So he was scared of that. So Hashem answers back, and another element is that he was also scared that maybe in this world the relatives of those people that he fought, the kings that he fought from the 4 kings, are going to come and attack him. So he's fearing for his life. So there's sort of 2 ways to explain what he's scared of. He's scared of the fact that he lost all his reward, and he's scared that they're going to come after him. So the pasuk says, "Anoichi magen loch, scharcha harbe me'od." Hashem said, "I'm your protector, and your reward is very great." So the Medrash says, "Anoichi magen loch ba'olam hazeh." I am your protector in this world. And your reward is very great. That's talking about in the next world, that you still have enough reward in the next world that you're going to get your reward over there. Okay. Amalai, Hashem said to him, Avram, al tira, don't be scared. Shimini magenes l'cha b'chol makom she'ata haylech. Because my right hand is going to protect you wherever you go. Kitris lifnei peranios, like an armor in front of punishments. My right hand is going to protect you like an armor. And we saw in the end of the previous parak, in Parak Chav Zayin, we said that when Hashem helped Avraham Avinu fight the four kings, so Avraham Avinu ascribed the victory b'koyach yamincha, to the power of your right hand, to the power of Hashem's right hand. It can be whatever, allegorically speaking, not literally speaking. And in Parak Chav Vav, when we spoke about Avraham Avinu being saved by the fiery furnace, so it said that Hashem stretched out his right hand and helped him out. So we see this imagery of Hashem's right hand protecting Avraham Avinu. Fine. And that my hand is going to give you good reward in this world and in the next world. As it says in the pasuk, your reward is very great. Fine. So that's the chazon, the vision that we see that Avraham Avinu had a vision. Uva Mareh minayin. How do we know that Avraham Avinu had this other level of prophecy called a Mareh, a sight? Shinema, it says in the pasuk, Vayera elav Hashem. Hashem appeared to him. So here you see that it's saying that Hashem appeared to him. When we were talking about the other level of chazon, it says the word of Hashem appeared to Avram in a vision. Here we're saying Hashem appeared to him. So that you see a chazon, it seems like it's talking about the word of Hashem, and this lashon of Mareh is talking about Hashem himself appearing to him. Now, this parak happens to be that this parak, a large part of this parak was censored, and a lot of the continuation, like some of the earlier Mefarshim didn't have it. So the Radal is quite dearth in this parak. There isn't so much from the Mefarshim of the Radal, but the good news is that in this print of the Pirkei Eliezer that I have, so they printed in the back from the Abarbanel. The Abarbanel, if you know, lived in the time of the expulsion from Spain in 1492, and he was one of the well-to-do court Jews in the house of the Spanish king when they expelled the Jews. And afterwards, after the Jews were expelled, people lost their they lost their drive and their belief in the etc. Especially in Mashiach and these topics. So the Abarbanel wrote a series of svarim about prophecies and the fulfillment of prophecies, and specifically about Mashiach in particular, and that's one of the things the Abarbanel did. So the Abarbanel has a sefer called Yeshuas Mashiach. It's called the Yeshuas Mashiach, the salvation of his Messiah. The Abarbanel wrote this sefer, and the sefer is two parts, and the entire first part of the sefer is the Abarbanel's explanation of this parak of Pirkei Eliezer. First, he quotes word for word the whole lashon of the parak, and the Abarbanel's style is he asks like a whole bunch of questions. So he asks in this parak he asks 16 questions straight, and then he goes and he explains the whole thing in a way that he's going to answer up all 16 questions. So when we're going through this parak, we're not going to have with us as much Radal as usual, but we will have the Abarbanel. Now, the first question is like this, and the Radal actually talks about this as well, and the other Mefarshim also. But the first question is, we see that Avraham Avinu had two levels of prophecy, a Chazon and a Mareh, right? Because we said this pasuk of Vayero Elav Hashem, as if Avraham Avinu is unique amongst all the other prophets, that he has these two things of prophecy, Chazon and Mareh, that he attained this high level of prophecy called a Mareh. Don't we find this expression of Mareh by other Nevi'im? That's what the Mefarshim are bothered by. By Yitzchak Avinu, it says, "Vayer Elav Hashem, vayemer al tered Mitzrayim." Beginning of Parshas told us. By Yeshaya Hanavi, it says, "Vo'eras Hashem." Yeshaya Perek Vav Pasuk Aleph. We find a lot of other prophets had the same lashon of they saw Hashem, a Mareh. So how does that work out? The Radal speaks about this. Also, but the Zayis Ranan, which is the sefer from the Magen Avraham on Shulchan Aruch, so he wrote a sefer on the Yalkut Shimoni on Remez Ayin Vav. The Zayis Ranan writes that there's a difference between Avraham Avinu and the other prophets. Chazal tell us that there's a difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and other prophets. That Moshe Rabbeinu says, Chazal tell us that Moshe Rabbeinu saw his prophecy ba'aspaklaria ha'me'ira, with, let's call it, a glass that was clear, visible. And other prophets saw their prophecies ba'aspaklaria she'ena me'ira, through a glass that wasn't so visible. I like to use the mashal of like a regular glass that's mamish like see-through, and then sometimes you have a foggy glass. You could buy a certain type of glass that's like foggier, so no one could like look into your house. It's like distorted like that, right? So Avraham Avinu, so most Nevi'im only saw with aspaklaria she'ena me'ira, through a foggy glass, and Moshe Rabbeinu had this high level of prophecy that he could see through a glass that was me'ira. It was mamish clear. So the Zayis Ranan says that Avraham Avinu also attained this level of nevuah of aspaklaria me'ira, of the clear glass. That's what the Zayis Ranan says. So now the question is, well, Pirkei Eliezer seems to be saying that there was something unique about Avraham Avinu, that everyone else had a Chazon Alayla and Avraham Avinu had Chazon Mareh. So why is that? What's unique about Avraham Avinu? Is it's like the same thing as Moshe Rabbeinu. It's a big thing to be the same thing as Moshe Rabbeinu, but it sounded like from our Medrash over here that there's something unique about Avraham. Unique means exactly unique. It doesn't mean slightly unique, right? So what are we saying over here? So the Zayis Ranan says that Moshe Rabbeinu only had Mareh, only had this level of nevuah that was with a clear glass. Avraham Avinu had both. He sometimes saw through a clear glass and sometimes didn't see through a clear glass. So that's why he's unique. That's what the Zayis Ranan says. He's unique in that he's in some ways like Moshe Rabbeinu, in some ways not. All other Nevi'im were for sure not like Moshe Rabbeinu. That's more or less what the Zayis Ranan says. The question is that I wrote down here that the Maral in Gur Aryeh Bamidbar Parak Lamed Pasuk Beis says about Moshe Rabbeinu himself that Moshe Rabbeinu himself also sometimes saw through aspaklaria me'ira and sometimes not. The idea of the Maral is that Sefer Devarim was a lower level of prophecy that Moshe Rabbeinu had vis-a-vis the rest of the Torah. So if you say like that, so then what's the difference in Avraham Avinu and Moshe Rabbeinu? They're going to be the same. Now, another element over here is that the Rambam in multiple places in Hilchos Yisrael Torah and in his Yud Gimel Ikrim and I think in Moreh Nevuchim as well, the Rambam writes that Moshe Rabbeinu was the only Navi ever to attain this level of Aspaklaria HaMe'ira, and no other Navi was able to attain that level, and this is one of the fundamentals of Judaism, and if you don't believe this, then you're not Pikaris. So according to this, the Zayis Ran and the Magen Avraham said not Pikaris, because he said that Avraham Avinu was on that level. That comes out very funny. I don't know what to do. Then I found that the Abarbanel sort of speaks about this, and the Abarbanel says, Ein Safek Etzli, there's no Safek to me, that the Kavana of the Rambam, when he writes all these things in the three places that I mentioned, the Rambam is writing it to argue on Pirkei Eliezer. I know, we've had this before in Parak Daled, Hey, where is it? Parak Gimel. In Parak Gimel, we had the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim specifically arguing on Pirkei Eliezer.
What does it mean? What does it mean to argue on Pirkei Eliezer? It has to be a different source. It's not it can argue.
It's probably coming from a different source. Just that's not stated somewhere. That maybe it's not stated clear, or a source that we don't have, or something like that.
Not himself.
Yeah.
He's bringing a different source.
The Abarbanel also says some other interesting ideas. He says that it could be that, let's say, Yeshaya. So Yeshaya said, I saw Hashem. Va'ira es Hashem. So saying, how do we know that Yeshaya really attained that level of nevuah that we're calling Mareh? He's saying that he saw it. But really it could be he's seeing Hashem in a way that's through a foggy glass, and he thinks he's seeing a clear picture, but he's not really seeing a clear picture. The Abarbanel says that what we need is a pasuk that tells you that a certain Navi saw Hashem, that the pasuk is talking. The Torah is talking to us, not the Navi talking to us. And then the Abarbanel, we do find an example of that by Yitzchak, that it says that Hashem appeared to Yitzchak. So what do you do with that? So then the Abarbanel says that it could be that when we're talking about that Avraham Avinu is unique amongst the prophets, it just means amongst the prophets that lived after Moshe Rabbeinu. So you could say, yeah, you're right. Avraham and Yitzchak, they both achieved Chazon and Mareh, and Moshe Rabbeinu as well. But from Moshe Rabbeinu and onwards, there was no one who achieved that. That's more or less what the Abarbanel says. Okay. Let's go further. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yehuda says, Eisei halayla shenigla HaKadosh Baruch Hu al Avraham Avinu hu leil HaPesach. Rabbi Yehuda says that night that Hashem revealed himself to Avraham Avinu and told him about these different things, that night was the night of Pesach. It was Leil Pesach. Now if you're keeping track, so then you'll realize that in Perek Chavav we said that the night that Sarah was abducted by Paro was Leil Pesach, and then we said maybe even the night that she was abducted by Abimelech was Leil Pesach, and then we said in Perek Chav Zayin that the victory that Avraham Avinu had over the 4 kings, that was also Leil Pesach, and now we're saying another Leil Pesach that the story with the Bris Bein HaBesarim, the covenant between the pieces, that also happened on Leil Pesach. The Radal speaks about, well, we said that it happened right after the story of the 4 kings. But if the story of the 4 kings happened to Leil Pesach, so this couldn't be right after. So maybe right after just means like exactly a year after. That's not so long. If you lived 175 years like Avraham Avinu did, so then a year after could be considered right after. Okay, so Hashem came to Avraham Avinu on Leil Pesach. V'amar Loi, Hashem said to him, Yesh b'cha koyach, v'hoitziyai oisai l'chutz. Hashem took him outside. V'amar Loi, Hashem said to him, Yesh b'cha koyach lisbar kol tzvah hashamayim. Says to him, do you have the power, the ability to count all the legions of the heavens, meaning all the stars in the heavens? Amar Avraham said in front of him, V'chi yesh mithpar l'gidud achol. Is there a number to all your legions? Is it possible to do such a thing, to count them? Amar Loi. So Hashem said to him, Kach lo yisofer zaracha miroiv. So too, just like you can't count the stars because there's so many of them, so too your descendants will not be able to be counted because they'll be so numerous. Shneimar, as it says in the pasuk, Vayamar Loi ko yihi ezracha. So shall be your seed; they won't be able to be counted. Rabbi Leomi Izmir has a different girsa. It says, Amar Loi kach yisaper zaracha miroiv. He doesn't have the word lo yisafer, that they won't be counted. It says kach yisafer, so they shall be counted. And then he says, what do you mean they should be counted? They shouldn't be counted. And he has a whole arichos based on that. I think it's a mistake in girsa. Hashem said you won't be able to count them, but he had that word lo wasn't there in his version of Pirkei Eliezer. Okay, now we'll get into the story of the covenant between the pieces. First, I want to read the psukim to get a pshat understanding of what happened, and then we'll understand a little bit better the drush that the Mefarshim are going to be speaking about. So Hashem came to him. Avraham Avinu said to him, "Vayoymar." He said to Hashem Elikim, "Bama Eda Ki Rashana." This is Bereshis Perek Tezvav Pasuk Ches. Hashem said to Avraham Avinu said to Hashem, how am I going to know that I'm going to inherit the land of Eretz Yisrael? Chazal tell us that because Avraham Avinu asked this question, he got punished, that his descendants are going to be in exile in Egypt. And the story of the descendants of Avraham Avinu being exiled in Egypt is not what we're going to be discussing tonight. That is it's a completely separate topic. We spoke about it in Perek Mem Ches later on, which that's where we learn out that it's a separate topic, the exile of Egypt. We're going to speak about the later exiles. Vayemer Elav, Hashem said to him, Kicholi egla mishuleshes. Take for me a calf, mishuleshes. Mishuleshes is a very hard word to translate because we don't know exactly what the context is, but let's say it means three calves. Ve'ez mishuleshes, and 3 goats. Ve'ayel mishulash, and 3 rams. V'sar v'goizal, and a tar, which is a pigeon, pashtus, v'goizal, and a small bird. We know what, it doesn't say what type of bird, but Chazal tell us that it was a dove. because pigeons and doves are the only types of birds that could go on the mizbech. Avram Avinu took all these things, and he cut them in half. And he took each half and put it corresponding to the other half. So like he cut, let's say, he cut the calf and took one half here and one half here. And he cut the goat, put one half here, etc. But the bird, he didn't cut in half. What do you mean the bird? We said there were two birds, right? Tar is a pigeon, and a gazelle is a small bird. So there's two birds. Why does it say the bird? The bird. It's two birds. Then an eagle came on these carcasses that were on the floor, and it came to eat them up. And Avram was sort of like sitting there with them. And then the sun came down, and then Avram Avinu had another nevuah. And Avram became sleepy. A great sleep encompassed him. He fell asleep. And a great darkness and a scary and big darkness fell upon him. And then Hashem told Avram Avinu that his descendants are going to be exiled in Egypt. Okay, what? It's in the background, no? Huh? I turned the back on. Oh. Okay. So now we'll see the drush over here that the Chazal are going to tell us that these different animals that Avram Avinu cut in half and he like walked between them as a significant as a way of signifying the covenant between him and Hashem. Each of these animals represent the different kingdoms that are going to rule over Klal Yisrael. Just one more point that I forgot to mention was that we said that Avram Avinu originally he said that he was scared that he lost all his zechuyos, and Hashem said, "Don't worry, I'm going to protect you. You have a lot of reward." So then Hashem took him outside and showed him, you're going to have a lot of kids. Right? So what's the continuity between the two? He was scared, so Hashem said, "Don't worry, I'm protecting you. You have a lot of reward." And then he takes him outside and tells him you're going to have a lot of children. What shaykh is between the two? So Abarbanel says that the pshat is that Avram Avinu, for whatever reason, he brings the whole arichos why you would think such a thing, but for whatever reason, Avram Avinu thought that since he doesn't have any children, so he doesn't have a chelik in Olam Haba. So that Hashem comes to assuage his fears and tells him, no, don't worry. You have a chelik in Olam Haba. First of all, you have a chelik in Olam Haba. Second of all, even though you don't have any children now, you're going to have a lot of children later. That's the way that Abarbanel explains it. Fine. Now we'll go into the four kingdoms. Last week I mentioned that the Chazal tell us in a lot of places that there's going to be four kingdoms that rule over Klal Yisrael. Babylon, the ones that sent us into the first Golus, that they destroyed the first Beis Hamikdash. Then comes Paras Umadai, Persia and Media. They're the ones who took over Babylonia from the kingdom of Nebuchadnezzar's descendants. Then comes Yavan, the Greeks. The Greeks took over after the Persians. And then comes Edom, Rome. Edom is the same thing. That they took over from the Greeks, more or less. Those are the four kingdoms that are going to rule over Klal Yisrael. Now the Chiddush of what? What about Egypt? No, we said that Egypt is a separate sugya. It's a separate golus. That's not the topic tonight of Egypt. These are the four galuyos that we found. Last week we spoke about different ramazim in different places in the Torah where we find the hint to these four galuyos. Now the chiddush of Pirkei Eliezer in this parak is going to be that Yishmael also somehow counted in that, and we're gonna have to see exactly where Yishmael fits in. Go on. Rabbi Akiva Omer. Rabbi Akiva says, or a different guess says, Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Rabbi Eliezer says, Hera Kadosh Baruch Hu Avram Avinu ben HaBesarim Malchios Meishlin v'Oivdin. Kadosh Baruch Hu showed Avram Avinu at the covenant between the pieces, kingdoms which are going to rule over Klal Yisrael, and then they're going to be destroyed. Shinamar Vayemer Elav Kecholi Egla Mishleshes. Because it says in the pasuk, Hashem said to him, take for me a third calf. What's this third calf or three calves? Zu Malchus Revi'is. This calf is referring to the fourth kingdom, Shehi Malchus Edom, Shehi Ke'egla Dasha. The fourth kingdom is a reference to Malchus Edom, the kingdom of Edom, of Esav, of Rome, which is like a calf, which is like threshing around and like stomping on everything. One of the things that hopefully we'll get to tonight is that in a lot of the Yemenite midrashim, Temani midrashim, there are a few slight changes to some of these drashas, exactly who's talking about what. It seems like they had a slightly different Masara about how these things worked. But in Medrash HaGadol, Bereshis Tezvav Tes, it says that the Eglah is talking about Bavel, not Edom. The Eglah of Mishuleshes is talking about Bavel, not Edom.
What is it talking about when he says that
it's like a calf that's thrashing in the... I mean, like it's stomping on the floor. It's like walking around and stomping everything that it steps on.
So what's important in that thing?
That Rome just like was conquering the world and just like stepping on everything, and like that's what it's talking about. Rome.
I imagine the sound of boots.
Of boots,
like
yeah.
They represent the Nazis.
Yeah.
All the time.
Well, there are a lot of connections between the Romans and the Nazis. The Romans, their symbol was the eagle. The Nazis, their symbol was the eagle as well. You could talk a lot about that, but that's not what we're talking about. The Medrash HaGadol, which is a medrash that comes from Teman, so over there it says that the Eglah is referring to Bavel. So I think that it's pretty. You can argue that it's really because of the censor. They didn't want to write Edom, they wrote Bavel. We find this in a few places that when people are scared of the censor, when they mean to write Edom, they write Bavel. When they mean to refer to Rome or to Western culture, they write Bavel instead, because Bavel is more like that's historical, and people don't really look at themselves necessarily as a continuation of Bavel as much as other people look at. The Christians look at themselves as a continuation of Rome more than, let's say, the Muslims look at themselves as a continuation of Bavel. It's like no shaykhs. It happens to be that Saddam Hussein looked at himself as a continuation of Nebuchadnezzar. But Saddam Hussein he wasn't Muslim really, he was really secular. To keep that in mind. But whatever, we find also in a famous song that we sing on Shabbos, Durar Yikra, from Dunash, from one of the earlier Rishonim. So Dunash writes, Duraich Pura B'seich Batra V'gam Bavel Asher Gavra. That's the words that he writes. But if in truth, Dureich Pura B'seich Batra, that Hashem is going to smash Batra, V'gam Bavel Asher Gavra, and He's also going to overpower Bavel. That seems like it's talking about two different things. He's going to overpower Batra, and Batra is the city that's the capital of Edom, of the land of Edom, of the Esav. And then he's going to V'gam Bavel Asher Gavra, and also Bavel. It's talking about two things. People have told us that from manuscripts and whatever that we know that the original version of this song was V'gas be'edoim asher gavra. Gas means like a olive press, and there will be an olive press in Edom. Hashem is going to smash Batra, and He's going to make an olive press in Edom. It's talking about the same thing. It's not talking about Bavel. It's really supposed to be talking about Edom, not Bavel. Why does it say Bavel? Because the censor didn't want to write Edom because he was Christian and he understood that Christianity is a continuation of Rome, so they wrote Bavel instead. So it's more of a neutral term. Ve'ez Mishuleshes, a goat, three goats. Zu Malchus Yavan. That's referring to the kingdom of Yavan, of Greece. Shinama, so the post Sfir Ha'izim Higdil Ad Ma'od. Chazal tell us in that the third animal in the nevuah of Daniel, not nevuah, but the vision of Daniel, was the izim and was goats, and the goats represent Malchus Yavan, the Greece. Ayel Mishuash, a third ram. Zu Malchus Modai Paras. That's a reference to Malchus Modai Paras, the Persian and Media. Vitor. And a tar. Now we translated tar as a pigeon when we were reading the Psukim. But Pirkei Eliezer is going to translate it differently. Usually tar in Torah means a pigeon. But the Medrash says, Elu b'nei Yishmael. Tar refers to b'nei Yishmael, the descendants of Yishmael. Says the Medrash, Lo nemar tar zeh bilshen Torah. Tor over here doesn't mean Tor like we say in the Lashon of the Torah. In the Torah, Tor means pigeon. Ela, B'Lashon Aramis. It's rather we mean the word Tor in the Aramaic sense. Tor zehashor. Tor in Aramaic is the same as shor, a bull. And Chazal tell us, Kishiyatzmid shor zochar im nekeva. When the male bull gets together with the female bull, they're going to open up and they're going to destroy, and Yishadadu is like they're going to not destroy, but they're going to like conquer all the deep places. Now, because we said that Malchus Egla, the calf, the female calf, is Edom, right? Rome is the female calf. And now we're saying that Ishmael is a bull, a male, which is a male cow, right? So when you have the female together, Ishmael and Esav, Ishmael and Edom together, they're going to mamish make a lot of destruction in the world.
Rabbi would like that.
What? Yeah, I'm saying this is Pashup Shan, what the Medrash is saying. There's a sefer called Ale Zayis on the Zayis Ranan from Rav Kanner from Toronto, and he writes that another element is that the power of Yishmael is the power of Znus, and therefore when Yishmael and B'Misgaber they're gonna win through Znus. So everybody has a whole arichos about that. But I think Pashup Pshat is that when we have this quote unquote marriage of Yishmael and Esav, that's going to cause a lot of trouble together. And we find that in the end of Parshas Toldos, it says that Esav went and he married the daughter of Ishmael, and the Maral tells us that also in the end of days, Ishmael and Esav are going to join together and become like one. That's the ending of these different Malchias over here. Now, V'goizal, so we said V'tar, a pigeon, V'goizal, and a small bird. So what's the small bird? El Yisrael shenim shelu k'goizal. The small bird is talking about Bnei Yisrael, who are compared to a small bird. Shenemar, it says the pasuk, Yoinosi b'chag ve'asela. Right? Yoinosi b'chag ve'asela, my dove is, in a heart, is stuck in a rock. And so that dove in Shir Hashirim is referring to Klal Yisrael. Because of Achasi Samasi. And it says that Achasi, she's only one, Yenasi, she's my dove, Tamasi, she's perfect. And so we see that it's talking about Klal Yisrael. This small bird is talking about Klal Yisrael. But it's interesting that the first four animals we're talking about the people that are going to rule over Klal Yisrael, and then the last one is talking about Klal Yisrael itself. We'll speak about that in a moment. But Rabbi Acha ben Yaakov Omer. Rabbi Acha ben Yaakov says an interesting thing. He says, "Loi namar loshen zeh mishulashes ela gibarei chayach." This expression of mishulashes, of the third or three of them, the term mishulashes implies gibarei chayach. It implies great power. Shenamar, it says in the pasuk, "V'hachut amishulash leve beheri yinosak." A three-pronged rope, a rope that's made up of three strings twined together, leve beheri yinosak. It's not going to be easily frayed. It's put together. It's very strong. So we see that mishulash means something that's strong. So Rabbi Acha bar Yaakov is telling us that these different kingdoms that are going to rule over Klal Yisrael are going to be strong kingdoms. I guess except for Yishmael, because it doesn't say Mishulash by Yishmael, which is an interesting point. I just thought of that right now when I was reading it. Rabbi Misharshia Omer. Rabbi Misharshia says, this is somewhat cryptic and very interesting. Mishulashas, third or three-pronged, let's call them. We said there was going to be four malchis, but they're going to be three-pronged. What does that mean? Mishulashim yihiyu. They're going to be mishulashim. They're going to be tripled. What does that mean? Shloisha palmim asidim limshal be'eretz Yisrael. They're each going to rule over Eretz Yisrael 3 times. Pam rishayna kol echad ve'echad b'fnei atzmai. The first time, each one is going to rule on its own. Pam shniya b'shnayim shnayim. The second time, we have 4 kingdoms. They're each going to rule in pairs, 2 and 2. Pam Shlishis, Kulam Ka'achas, the third time, all the nations together are going to join together Lihilochem in Ben David to fight against the son of David, against Mashiach. Shneimar, it says the pasuk, Yisyatzvu Malchei Eretz. The kings of the land are going to stand up and they're going to fight Mashiach ben David. So the Medrash is saying over here an interesting idea that we have the four Malchios, and the four Malchios are going to rule over Klal Yisrael 3 times. First, each one on its own. First we had Bavel, Parsamodai, Yavan, and then Edom. Yeah? Then we're going to have them rule over Klal Yisrael 2 and 2. What does that mean, 2 and 2? So the Abarbanel says a very gishmak pshat. It says that first, each of these kingdoms ruled over Klal Yisrael separately. First, separate. First, Babylon on its own. Then Parsamodai on their own. Then Yavan on its own. Then Edom on its own. Fine. Then the second time, they're going to rule over Klal Yisrael in pairs. Meaning that the second time around, it's sort of going to be under the different nations are going to be united under a banner, and that banner is going to rule Klal Yisrael, and it's going to include 2 nations. What does he mean? He says like this. The first one he's talking about is going to be the banner of Ishmael, which is what he says the Islam religion. Islam is going to rule over Klal Yisrael, over Eretz Yisrael. Sorry, Islam is going to rule over Eretz Yisrael. When did that happen? So after Muhammad started Israel or whatever, so they came to Eretz Yisrael and they took over the land of Eretz Yisrael, right? So Islam includes Bavel, let's say what we call modern day Iraq and Syria. So that's Bavel, yeah. And then also Paras Ramadai, which we call nowadays more or less modern day Iran, Persia, is also under the same banner of Islam. So those 2 together ruled Eretz Yisrael. Yeah, you understand? And then afterwards, in the time of the Crusades, so then the Christians came to Eretz Yisrael. They conquered Eretz Yisrael and established a kingdom there, however short it was. And then Islam came back and conquered it. Right? Now, so when Christianity, there was, as we all know, there was the great schism in Christianity, and there was a split between the Catholic Church in Rome and the Greek Orthodox Church in the Byzantine Empire in Constantinople. Right? So according to that, it comes out that Christianity encompasses Yavan and Edom. So when the Christians ruled Eretz Yisrael, that was the kingdom of the two. The Yavan and Edom together ruled Eretz Yisrael. That's what Abarbanel says. And then in the future, Chazal tell us that all the nations of the world are going to come together and try to fight Eretz Yisrael. We sort of mentioned this earlier in Perek Tes, in Perek Eliezer, when we talk about the Levyasan, that everyone's going to come to Eretz Yisrael to fight over here. Rabbi Rabber implied this last week in his shir. He implied that what that means is that the UN is going to bring a quote unquote peacekeeping task force to Eretz Yisrael to forcibly evict the Jews from the occupied territories. And that's going to be all the nations of the world coming to Eretz Yisrael to kick the Jews out. That's what Rabbi Rabber sort of said last week. It could be that he didn't mean it exactly the way you said it right now, but that's more or less what he said. Now,
interesting.
Yes, very interesting.
It works.
What?
It works.
The Mamish works this way. You can look at this on Abarbanel. He goes through the history of Ishmael and Israel when they conquered this, and how there's 2 forms of Christianity. Mamish goes through. That's the Abarbanel's thing, to show us how all the nevuahs in Chazal and in Gemara, most of them already happened, and some of them didn't happen yet. But you can see how things are being set up that they could happen. Okay. Now I mentioned that it's a chiddush that Pirkei Eliezer puts in Yishmael into the 4 kingdoms, because Yishmael is not mentioned elsewhere in Chazal. It's usually just Bavel, Parsamodai, Yavan, and Edom. Where does Ishmael come in? So I said this b'kitzur last week, but I'll say it a little bit more in detail over here. We said that in the Nevuah of Daniel, when Daniel saw the 4 animals which represent the 4 Malchios, the 4 kingdoms that are going to rule over Klal Yisrael, so usually the way we understand it is that the first one is Babel, the second one is Parsa Madai, the third one is Yavan, and the fourth one is Edom. Yeah? Where does Ishmael fit in? So Rav Sadia Gaon, in his Pirush on Daniel, he writes, no, the first is Babel, the second is Parsa Madai, the third is Yavan, and the fourth is Edom and Ishmael together. That's what Rav Sadia Gaon writes in his Pirush Daniel Parak Zion. The Ibn Ezra argues, the Ibn Ezra says, no, the way you do it is like this. The first one is Babel, the second one is Parsa Madai, the third one is Yavan and Edom together, Greek and Rome together, because in a lot of ways Rome is a continuation of Greek and Greek culture, and they just the religion is more or less the same. They sort of switched a few names here and there, whatever, but Poseidon became Neptune, these type of things. Different Venus, what's her name? Aphrodite became Venus, right? Zeus became Jupiter. It's the same religion, it's just different names. So Rome is just a continuation of Greece. So Rome and Greece is the third one, and then the fourth one is going to be Malchus Ishmael separately as its own. Kol Tuv. As a separate thing on its own. And the Ibn Ezra writes this in his Pirush on Daniel, and he writes it again also in his Pirush on Chumash in Parshas Balak, in the Nevuah of Balak, where Balak speaks about the Messianic era. Now, the Ramban in Parshas Balak, when Bilam has his Nevuahs about the Messianic era, in the uncensored Ramban, you can only find this in the uncensored Ramban, in the Sadar of Cook Ramban. In most editions of the Ramban, this whole piece is taken out. And also the Ramban has a whole sefer about these topics, about Mashiach, called Sefer Geula. In the Sefer Geula Shar Gimel, he speaks about this. The Ramban argues on Ibn Ezra, and he argues on Rav Sadia Gaon. He says, no, Yishmael has no shaykhis. Chazal only tells us about 4, it doesn't tell us about 5, even though Yishmael is going to cause us a lot of tzara, as we all know, to our dissatisfaction. But Yishmael is not considered one of the 4 Malchios, even though in Pirkei Avos it does mention Yishmael. But the Ibn Ezra goes with the Midrashim that I mentioned last week, and other places in Chazal where it's only 4, and Yishmael is not one of the ones mentioned B'chlal. It's only going to be again Babel, Parsa Madai, Yavan, and Edom. So it says, and the Ramban says, you think the Torah has to mention to us every single kingdom that's going to give trouble to Klal Yisrael throughout history? It's only going to mention to us the ones that are going to cause a golus, or the ones that they themselves are going to be a continuation of the ones that brought the golus. So Babel brought golus of the Bayis Rishon, and Parsa Madai were direct continuation of Babel, because they conquered Babel. And then came Greece. Greece, they had, in certain ways, there was a golus in Eretz Yisrael with the Beis Hamikdash, but they were under Greek influence. That was the golus in itself. And then came Edom. They kicked us out of Eretz Yisrael, and they plowed over Yerushalayim, over the Beis Hamikdash, and they destroyed it. So each one it's a golus.
It's so funny now. We have a little bit of everything nowadays. We have Yavan here because there's so many people not keeping Torah. We have people dispersed all over the world, and we have Ishmael in here.
Right. So the Ramban says that nowadays we're still in the golus of Edom. Edom was the ones who initially destroyed the Beis Hamikdash and, let's say, kicked us out of Eretz Yisrael and plowed over Yerushalayim. Even though we're technically in Eretz Yisrael, but not really. We don't have a Malchus in Eretz Yisrael, so we're still in golus Edom right now. That's what the Ramban says. And then the Ramban adds a line of hope. He says, who knows? It looks like Yishmael is causing trouble for us right now. Could be that by the time Mashiach comes, Yishmael will be completely gone, and the people are really causing trouble to us will be just Edom, not Yishmael. So he says Yishmael is completely out of the picture. I have some problems with this Ramban, because I think that really Ishmael is a continuation, because they conquered from the Byzantines, they conquered Eretz Yisrael from the Byzantines, so then why should they be different than, let's say, Parsa Madai, who conquered from Babel? So I'm not sure exactly. The Maral in Netzach Yisrael Perek Chaf Aleph, the Maral says that the reason why Ishmael is not counted as one of the 4 kingdoms is he has a whole shtickle Torah over there that the four kingdoms, they draw from the koichos of Klal Yisrael. So he says that Ishmael doesn't draw from the powers of Klal Yisrael. You have to see exactly what he means by that. And then he says maybe Ishmael is included in Malchus of Paras. He has a whole arichos that I don't really want to get into because I really want to finish this parak tonight. But weiter. Vayivater oisam batovech. No, Rabbi Yeshua Omer. We're up to Rabbi Yeshua Omer. Rabbi Yeshua says, yeah, you have it. Lokach Avram Charbay. Avram Avinu took his sword. Ubiter some kol achad ve'echad l'shnayim, and he cut each of these animals into two. Shneimer vayivater oisam batovech, and he cut them in half. Like nowadays, tavach means like a agency, like a middleman. So like he cut them down the middle. He cut them in the middle. Okay, fine, we'll skip that part. If Avraham Avinu didn't cut these different animals, the world would never be able to stand. But since Avraham Avinu cut the animals, he weakened their power so that we would be able to withstand them to some degree. Avraham Avinu set up each half corresponding to its friend. He cut the cow in half, and then he put one half next to the two halves next to each other in between, like this. Shinama says the pasuk vayitin ish bisra lekras ve'ehu. Right. V'gezel ben Yaina hinir chayim, and that one bird, the gezel ben Yaina, the small bird which we said was a dove, he left alive. Shinama says the pasuk v'esetzipar le'vasar, the bird he didn't cut. Now, Pirkei Eliezer understands that there only was one bird, because the hatzipor like basar, the bird he didn't cut. When we were reading the pasuk, we said there were two birds. There was a dove and a pigeon, or we said a pigeon and a small bird. So we're saying no, there was no pigeon. The tar means a shar, like we said before, right? So when it says the bird he didn't cut, it's only talking about the one bird that was what the Torah calls the small bird that we're saying is a dove. From here you learn from here we learn that when the Torah stam says the word tzipor, it means a ben yoina, a dove. It's very difficult. Okay, right, whatever. It's because we're making the assumption that gezel means a dove, and then the gezel was the only bird, and then it says tzipor, so we know that tzipor means a dove. Chazal elsewhere tell us that there's two words for bird in Lashon HaKodesh. There's oif and tzipor. So the Sifri in Parshas Re'eh says that what's the difference between an oif and a tzipor? Oif means any bird, and tzipor dafka means a kosher bird. Here we're saying tzipor dafka means a dove, but elsewhere we say tzipor just means dafka, a kosher bird. Fine. So okay, fine. Now, so we have all these different animal parts around cut in half. We have the egla, the A's, and the ayil, and the tar that were cut in half. And then the gezel wasn't cut in half. Now, we said, okay, fine. Yorad ha'ayit alehem lefardan la'abdan. An ayit, which some people, I saw translated as an eagle. Usually Nesher is an eagle, so I don't know how that works. But the ayit, which is an eagle, came, or maybe it's someone said a vulture, maybe? I don't remember. I'm pretty sure I saw somebody saying that it was an eagle. But the ayat came to, disperse these animal parts and to destroy them. So what's that ayat, this eagle, or this vulture? Ve'ena ayat ala ben David shinim shala ayat. It's talking about Ben David, Mashiach Ben David, who is comparable to an ayat. Shinema, it says in the pasuk, ayat savo nachlasili. Now, so we see that Mashiach ben David, who's comparable to an ayat, is going to come and sort of destroy these different malchiyos. Now, I have a question that I wrote down over here. If we're talking about all the different animals that Avraham Avinu had, so we said that the gezel is referring to Klal Yisrael. And we said that he didn't kill the gezel, but the gezel was there with all the other animals. And the mashmos is that this eagle came to attack everything that was there. Because even what?
Including the small bird.
Including the small bird. Even the small bird was alive, but the eagle's coming to take everything, right? But so what? So Mashiach ben David is coming to take Klal Yisrael, to destroy Klal Yisrael. What does that mean? We said that the small bird is Klal Yisrael. So how does that work? So first I was thinking, Rabbi Rabba would probably like this one, that the Goizel, when we said that the Goizel is talking about Klal Yisrael, maybe it means the element of Klal Yisrael that's going to be similar to the four Malchios, that they're going to rule over Klal Yisrael, meaning the Erev Rav. And then when Mashiach ben David comes, just like Mashiach ben David is going to conquer Bavel, Paras, Adai, whatever, Ishmael, whatever, it's also going to conquer the Erev Rav. Could be. The problem is that the concept of Erev Rav ruling Mashiach is something that we don't necessarily find in Chazal per se. We find it in later Mekubalim, in the Gra especially, but we don't find it necessarily in Chazal. So it's hard to say that that's a pshat here in Perkei Eliezer. I found in the Temani Midrashim, in Mareh HaFela and in Medrash Habir, which are both Midrashim that they found in Teman, the Yemenites, so there it says that the Goizel is talking about Mashiach. Not that I'm not sure exactly. I think it also said that the I was Mashiach, but it also said that the Goizel was Mashiach. Now I found a different girsa. This is what I meant to say first. The Medrash HaChefetz, which is also a Temani Medrash. So Medrash HaChefetz says Tor v'Goizel is talking about Edom and Ishmael. He puts them together. Tor v'Goizel is Edom and Ishmael. Not like Perkei Eliezer, which says that Tor is Ishmael and Goizel is talking about Klal Yisrael. This is Tor and Goizel together, or Edom and Ishmael together. And the Medrash HaGadol, which is also a Temani Medrash, says that Tor v'Goizel is Edom and Ishmael, Shehem Gazlanim v'Chamsanim. Goizel is like a lashon of Gezela, like they steal things. So Edom and Ishmael are Gazlanim, they steal things, and they're Chamsanim, which we mentioned the word, there's a difference in the term Gazlan and Chamsan. The Gazlan takes things from you and has no intention of paying you, and a Chamsan steals it from you. He's going to pay you sometime later, but he's still stealing it. The different levels of stealing.
I don't get so bored by the problem with the Gozel and the eye and the eagle. It's an eagle.
Yeah.
I saw it differently. I thought that the Gozel was there to be represented as a Klal Yisrael, and
that's why it's still alive.
And it's still, yeah. Even though the nations are very powerful.
But the eagle, and you're saying the eagle has no shaykhs.
No, maybe it does. The Perkei Eliezer says that that's been David, the Shanim shall die.
Right.
So when Ben David comes, what's the problem? The Klal Yisrael it's already still like very small and weak compared to the big powerful nations.
Yeah.
But and then it comes a big bird and it says, "Look, we are. That's what we are."
But it didn't say that the big bird had to do with the little bird. Okay, I hear what you're saying. You're saying because they're both birds. You can say like this, like because they're both birds. So like the big bird is just sort of coming to protect the little bird, and it's going to destroy all the other animals.
I didn't even see him protecting the little bird. Just like there's no shackles at all with the little bird. The little bird is there with
I hear, yeah.
And it's compared with by his size. It's very small and weak. And there's
it's still You're saying there's no mashmos that the big bird is coming to attack it.
Whatever, Hashem's going to shecht them in the middle. And then it's going to, I don't know.
I hear. You say there's no mashmos that says that the big bird is going to attack also the little bird. That's what you're saying, basically.
I didn't say
that. When I read it, that's how I thought it was. That's what I thought it was saying.
Because it says it's going to attack.
It's going to attack all. It's going to attack them. Them.
Yeah.
So it sounds like them means everything that we were just talking about till now.
You're right. The mashma.
Yeah. Fine. Now, Abarbanel does something very interesting. When the eagle comes to attack all the pieces of meat. So Kitzeis Hashem Avram Yeshiv Umeini Falehem B'Siduroi. Avram Avinu, he took off his yarmulke like this. He took off his yarmulke and he was waving at the eagle to get the eagle away from them. Kedei Shelo Yimshel Behem Ha'ayit Ad Sheba Ha'erev, so that the eagle won't rule over them until it becomes evening. What happened over here? If the eagle represents Mashiach ben David coming and conquering all the Goyim, right? And Avraham Avinu was sending away the eagle. No, I don't want the eagle to start destroying all this stuff. Not yet. And then when it became evening, so then he let it destroy it. What? So what's this talking about?
What is evening? Darkness.
So the Abarbanel says like this. The Abarbanel says that this is a reference to a Gemara that we might all be familiar with, a Gemara in Ksubis, Daf Kufir Aleph Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, Gimel Shvuos Halalu Lama. There are 3 Shvuos that we find in Shir Shirim. What are these 3 Shvuos? And one of the 3 Shvuos is that Klal Yisrael promised Hashem that we're not going to force the Geula to happen. We're not going to go up the wall. When Hashem brings the Geula, we're not going to force it to happen. The other Shavuos were that the Goyim we're not going to rebel against the Goyim, and the third Shavuot was that the Goyim aren't going to do too bad, they're not going to be too bad towards us. Those are the 3 Shavuos. So basically, there's a Shavuot that Klal Yisrael said that we're not going to push the Geula to happen until it's the right time. This is, if you the Satmar Rebbe has a sefer called Vayol Moshe against different aspects of Zionism, and he has a Maimar Shalosh Shavuos. That's one of his parts of that sefer. And he according to that Gemara, he says that what Zionists are doing, that they're creating a state of Israel against not rebelling necessarily against the nations, but even though they have the nations with them, but they're trying to push the Geula into happening, that's also according to the Gemara. So the Abarbanel says that that's what Avraham Avinu was doing. He was making sure that the eagle's not going to come and start destroying the nations until the time is right. Until it becomes evening, which Abarbanel says, the Pasuk tells us, Vahil Eis Erev Yiyah. In the evening is going to be light. That's talking about when Mashiach is going to come. Right? We've spoken about that idea before. It's going to be day and night together. So Avraham was sending away the eagle the whole day, making sure that it doesn't come to destroy the Goyim until the right time. And then when the right time comes, then it's going to be, then he's going to allow it to destroy the different pieces of the animals. But Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, "Mikana to lomeid she'ein mashlan shel arba machias ha'elu ela yom echad miyavish l'kadosh baruch hu." Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, from here you understand that the rule of these 4 kingdoms over Klal Yisrael is only going to last 1 day of Hashem, because it said that the whole day Avraham Avinu was protecting them from the eagle, and then till night. So it was the whole day till night. It's for sure like what you said. Shneimar says the whole day is going to be a malady. It's going to be a sickness, right? Except chutz mishtei yadei shah. The Abarbanel says this is a special Kabbalah that Chazal had, that the galus of Arba Malchus is going to be a day of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, except for 2/3 of an hour. A day minus 2/3 of an hour. Now, I don't want to get, if this was the beginning of this year, we would get more into this, but since it's towards the end, I don't want to get exactly into all the cheshbonos over here. But in Parak Mem Ches, we discussed that there's 2 ways of calculating what is considered, let's say, an hour of Hashem's year, of Hashem's day. We said that 1,000 years for us is 1 day for Hashem. So there's a way of saying that an hour of Hashem is 86 years for us, or an hour of Hashem is 83 1/3 years for us. There's different ways of calculating it. And there's the Zayis Ranan, and then there's the Pashup Shot over there. It has to do with the 2 Gersayos in Parak Mem Ches about when Miriam was born, etc. But the point is that the Abarbanel says that when it says Yom Echad Miyam Shel Kadosh Baruch Hu, that's talking about, we're assuming that a day of Hashem is usually going to be, when we say that one day of Hashem is 1,000 years for us, so the Abarbanel says that's talking about a day in terms of a creative day, a day that Hashem is doing Ma'aseh Bereishis, where we said that Hashem is only doing Ma'aseh Bereishis during the day, not the night. Right? We said in Parak Yud Aleph that the day that Adam Rishon was created, we had made a whole chart about it. The day that Adam Rishon was created was 12 hours. A day was 12 hours. Yeah, because the active day that Hashem was creating Adam Rishon was only 12 hours of that day, not 24 hours. So he says that when we say that 1,000 years for us is 1 day of Hashem, that means a 12-hour day of Hashem. But if you want to say a full day of Hashem, so then it's going to be 2,000 years for us. So now then we're saying minus 2/3 of an hour. So basically the Abarbanel has a whole cheshbon that if you count 2,000 years minus 2/3 of an hour of years of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, from when Nebuchadnezzar started ruling until later in history, it'll come out to the year 1503. And the Abarbanel says, Mashiach is going to come in the year 1503. That's what the Abarbanel says. Now, in hindsight, we know that he was wrong, but it's a nice cheshbon exactly how the Abarbanel comes out to that number, the year 1503, which was not long after the Jews were expelled from Spain. They were expelled in 1493. It was mamish. Okay. You should know that this is true. It's going to be except for 2 hours, 2/3 of an hour into the day. Except for 2 hours in the day. Not 2/3 of an hour. 2 hours. I'm sorry. I said 2/3 of an hour. I meant to say 2 hours. 2 hours of the day. Because when the sun goes down in the evening, so already from 2 hours before Mamish goes down, you see the sun is already getting visibly weaker. So just like that, so the Golos, which is going, is like, I guess like a mashal to like the sun going down, so 2 hours before it's completely going to go down, it's already getting weaker. So too, before the evening comes, which we're understanding that evening means the time of Mashiach, the light of Ben David, the light of Kol Yisrael is going to already grow. It is going to be at the time of Erev, where it's going to be light. Fine. Avram stood up and he prayed in front of Kadosh Baruch Hu, so that these four kingdoms won't subjugate Klal Yisrael. He started praying in front of Hashem that this shouldn't happen. And what happened? Nafla alav shnas tardema v'yashan. And what happened was a deep sleep fell upon Avram Avinu and he fell asleep. Shinamam v'sardema nafla Avram, and the sleep fell upon Avram. V'chi adam sheiche v'yashen v'yachal espalo. Is a person able to lie down and to sleep, and he's able to daven? Yeah, I've seen people doing it. You go to shul, you go to the Nate's Minyan, there's people that are sleeping and davening at the same time. No, but seriously, the Medrash is saying it means that Avram Avinu fell asleep. That Avram Avinu was lying down and sleeping because of the koyach of the tefillah. And Mepharshim say that he put so much energy into his praying that he lost all his energy and he fell asleep because he needed to recover. That's what the Marzu says. The Abarbanel has a whole different idea over here. The Abarbanel says, we'll say it fast. The Abarbanel says that what it means is Avram Avinu slept, meaning he stopped davening. He davened a little bit that it shouldn't happen, but then at a certain point he accepted it and said, okay, Hashem, I trust in you. You're not going to completely destroy Klal Yisrael. You're going to watch over us even through these Arba Galiyos, and then and everything is going to be okay at the end of the day. And Avram Avinu was saying that I recognize that Hashem, you are going to use these Arba Galiyos as an opportunity to give punishment to the Rishoyim. To give punishment to the tzaddikim in this world, so when they go to Olam Haba, they'll have the proper schar, and to give reward to the Rishoyim in this world, so that when they go to Olam Haba, they'll be completely, in Gehenna and etc. Fine. So what does it say happened? Shinara says the pasuk, "V'hine ema chashecha gedela nefelas alav." Behold, there was a great and dark fear that fell upon him. So now we're going to go back and say how this great, dark fear fell upon him, which are 5 different words. Each one is referring to one of the 5 malchiyos that we've been discussing until here. Ema zu malchus revis. Fear is talking about the 4th kingdom, meaning Edom. T'chsiv ba d'chila vamtinis b'sakifa. In the Nevuah of Daniel saw, when he saw the 4th animal, the fourth beast. So he was so scared, and he said he was very scared. He didn't even say what it was. He says it was just like something that was like really scary. So and that was talking about Edom. So we know that Edom is referred to as the scary thing. The Chashecha, the dark one, Zu Malchus Yavan, is talking about the kingdom of Greece. They're considered dark. Why? Because they darkened the eyes of Kal Yisrael from all the mitzvahs in the Torah. Now you probably heard this medrash over Hanukkah many times. The Chazal tell us in the pasuk in the beginning of Bereshit says, "V'aretz ha'yisrael v'choshech al pnei sahim." What's choshech? Choshech is Yavan for a different reason. That they darkened the eyes of Kal Yisrael with their gzeras, not because they darkened them from the mitzvahs, but because of their gzeras. And then it says, the medrash says that they made them ride on a horn of a shore. It could be talking about the same thing. It's just like over there it focuses on the gzera. Over here it just focuses on the mitzvahs that they couldn't do.
Yeah, the mitzvahs are the result of the gzera.
It could be. Gedolah, we said it was a great fear. Zumachos Parsa Madai Shagala Limkais Yisrael Bechinam. Because Malchus Parsa Madai, they had the great chutzpah to sell Kal Yisrael for free. That Achashverosh was very willing to give over the Jews to Haman to let them destroy it for almost nothing. He gave them money, but what's money worth, right? And it fell as Zumachos Bavel. It fell upon Avraham. What's the falling upon? That's talking about Malchus Bavel. Shebiyadam Nafla Teres Yisrael, that the crown of glory of Yisrael fell into the hands of Bavel. Alav, it fell upon Avraham Avinu. Ele b'nei Ishmael. These are the sons of Ishmael. Aleim ben David Yitzchak, that upon them Mashiach is going to grow upon them and destroy them. Shneimar says the pasuk, Eivish Albish Peshes v'Olav Yotzitz Nizra, and upon them his crown is going to grow. His crown is like it was a reference to Mashiach. Was going to be Melech Mashiach is going to have like a crown. Again, the Temani Midrashim slightly differ from Pirkei Eliezer over here. Medrash Habiur, which is a Temani Medrash, says basically like Pirkei Eliezer that Ema is Edom, but it says that Ema is Edom and Ishmael. Chashech is Yavan, Gedolah is Parsamadai, and the Felis is Bavel. Fine, that's the Medrash Habiur. And Medrash HaChefetz says a little bit less like Pirkei Eliezer. It says that Ema is Bavel, which again we could say that Bavel really means Edom, because I said earlier that a lot of times they take out the word Edom and put it in instead Bavel because of the censors. Chashech zu Paras. Chashech is Paras, and Pirkei Eliezer says Chashech is Yavan, so he argues on Pirkei Eliezer. Gedolah is Edom. See, you can't say that Ema Zu Bavel means Edom, because he says that what's it called? Gedolah means Edom. The Feles is Edom and Yishmael together, that marriage of Edom and Yishmael. Fine. Rabbi Azariah says, "Le'nivru al-malchiyas ha'elu, ela eitzim legehenim." These kingdoms were only created as wood for the burning of Gehenna. Shneimar, it says in the pasuk, "V'nei sanu ashan v'lapid eish asher avar." Behold, there's an oven, a smoking oven, and a torch of fire which is passing through. Ve'ein tanur v'lapid el Gehenna, and tanur, an oven, expression of oven, and lapid, which means yair lapid, which means a torch. It's talking about Gehenna. Shneimar says in the pasuk, "Nu Hashem asher urloi b'tzion v'sanu lo b'Yerushalayim." The words of Hashem is that there's going to be a fire for him in Zion, ur loy b'Tzion. There's going to be fire in Zion. The sanur loy b'Yerushalayim. There's going to be an oven in Yerushalayim. It's talking about I think the burning up of the Yetzer Hara in Gehenna, something like that. Al Kaponim, that is more or less the parak over here. Any questions? Is anyone left? Yeah. Gotcha. Okay, I'll go to